the article you wrote was really talking about how, I think from your words, people in the United States, a lot of them, particularly younger people, don't recognize how different our society is from other societies out there. And in particular, I remember one part of Infidel where you're talking about being in this Dutch setting where there was things being debated with regard to Islam. Is Islam violent? Is it not violent? And you stood up and you gave your opinion, and your sense of being in a society where it was okay to voice your feelings, and you didn't have to worry about being told to be quiet in Dutch society.
Except I was, in the end,
right,
to self-censor and so on. But again, to go back, when America liberated itself from British rule about 244, 245 years ago, things were really different. There was, and I remember reading about how religious freedom and the freedom of conscience and the freedom of speech were regarded as very important. And it's one of the, that First Amendment is something that Americans then really got into trying to establish and achieve. And the generations that worked hard to do that obviously value it way more than the generations that inherited those values and inherited the prosperity and inherited all these various kinds of freedoms. And so the challenge now is for those who inherited it, who don't know what it is to struggle for things because they've never had to struggle for things. It's for those generations now to continue to pass it on to the next and the next and the next generation. And in Europe, before 1989, and I wasn't in Europe before 1989, but if you looked at the conversations they were having and the things that they were writing about, these freedoms meant something to them because of the Cold War. After 1989, in a decade or so, we started to sink into moral relativism. We started to sink into, a mental and intellectual discourse where we were saying, well, that freedom of speech, actually, it's kind of rude. Why? Let's just let it go. Talking about Islam and criticizing Islam, Salman Rushdie being threatened, other Muslims and ex-Muslims being threatened, that was presented as, of course, they have the right to say these things. Of course, Salman has a right to write his book, but he shouldn't provoke. Why provoke? And unfortunately, that sentiment has now made its way to America. So it's interesting for me to see how easy it is for those who've inherited freedoms and prosperity to let go of those things.
Right, and it's interesting in your book, you talk about moving from place to place and the increasing use of the hijab and other, you see other manifestations of Islam kind of spreading as you move from place to place. And I remember a portion of the book where you're talking about, they sent a reporter back to kind of dig up dirt for a story about you. And I think it was Kenya where you saw a video of Kenya and your brother was back there and you noticed people walking on the street with a lot more, wearing, the hijab. And so you've seen this spread of this ideology which restricts freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and actually is very much like the cancel culture that's growing up here in the United States. When you now look back on your time moving from Kenya to the Netherlands and then moving to the United States, how has Europe changed over that time? And then how do you think the United States has changed, really, since I think the first time you were here was 2008, is that right?
2006. So the first time I came here was 2002, but that was very brief. And then I kept coming back, but I actually moved here permanently in 2006, September of 2006. So, I saw this what was in the early days gradual, but later on it seemed to go with a frightening pace. a frightening speed. But I left Somalia in the 1970s, and I don't remember women covered from head to toe. I don't remember I knew that everybody was a Muslim, or I thought of everyone as a Muslim, but I don't remember any kind of specific religious fundamentalism. And I could see that contrast, because when we left Somalia and went to Saudi Arabia, my God, that was a different country. Yes, the women were walking in black garb from head to toe, wearing gloves and socks, and separated from the men, and all this over, 98 degrees, 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So that was quite something. There were, every few feet, there was a mosque. There was a lot of religious expression, and not just expression, but a lot of religious imposition and oppression. The atmosphere felt oppressive. And it's one of the things that I'm really most grateful for, that my family were deported from Saudi Arabia before I went into puberty. And then we went to Ethiopia, and there again I saw that the people might be religious, but it was very much more relaxed if you take that standard of Saudi Arabia. And then Kenya, even more relaxed, because most Kenyans around me at that time were Christians, not Muslim. There were some Muslims, and I remember my mother going to school and demanding that I wear the headscarf and a pair of trousers under my school uniform. And the teacher in my primary school, what you guys call elementary school, refused to do so and said, here are the rules. We have a school uniform, you abide by that. And my mother just went away feeling sad and disappointed, but luckily didn't pull me out. Fast forward, when this documentary is made in 2006 and the camera crew from the Netherlands go off to Kenya to investigate my family life, I was just shocked. Yes, you're absolutely right. Stunned to see how the streets of Kenya had changed. They visited both of the schools that I went to, the elementary school and the high school. And now, instead of the odd girl wearing a headscarf, or none, I would say most of them were wearing a headscarf. So I remember just looking at that visual and thinking, that has just only happened in 10 years. That's just in one decade. And then same thing in Europe, the Muslim communities, the Muslim minorities in Europe were very much, at least to me, it looked like in the early days, they were attempting to assimilate. And yes, I did see women walking about a foot behind their husband, 3 feet behind their husbands, and pushing baby prams. But in a decade, again, that community has changed dramatically. Now you go to those neighborhoods, and it's not just the married women with the children who are covered from head to toe. There are more and more women. And it becomes stifling because you can't really get out of it. You probably don't want to wear the hijab or the burqa, but others will come to you and enforce it. And then the women who don't want and the families who don't want, they get out of these neighborhoods. And so in Europe, what you see is this establishment of Muslim majority ghettos where Sharia law is informally enforced. And that, again, is a product of da'wah, which is the presentation I gave to you and your colleagues in 2017.